who we've been asking, where is he? He's backed away from an effort to join a lawsuit over the impeachment probe. Mulvaney's attorneys have withdrawn the request to be part of a lawsuit filed by John Bolton's former deputy, Charles Kupperman, who has asked a court to determine whether he can testify. According to the New York Times, Mulvaney's reversal came just hours after a lawyer for both Bolton and Kupperman argued in court that his clients wanted nothing to do with Mulvaney because they had vastly different interests. As the Times points out, Mulvaney was among those facilitating the Ukraine effort, while Bolton was among those objecting to it. Not only did the motion filed by Bolton and Kupperman's attorney try to keep Mulvaney out of the lawsuit, it also advanced an argument that Mulvaney may have to testify in the impeachment probe. The motion specifically notes that Mulvaney appeared to admit that there was a quid pro quo during a White House briefing last month, meaning he may not be able to defy a subpoena by Democrats since he's already discussed the matter publicly. Mulvaney signaled last night that he will file his own lawsuit challenging his congressional subpoena. And that's where I have a question for former U.S. Attorney and MSNBC contributor Barbara McQuade. Barbara, could this go on forever? Can they subpoena him and then he push back by filing a lawsuit against the subpoena? Could this be endless? Will we ever hear from Mick Mulvaney?
Yeah, I think one of the things that the congressional Democrats have sought to do is try to reduce that strategy of endless lawsuits. One of the things that we saw last week is they actually withdrew the subpoena that they served on Charles Kupperman. And so that lawsuit that Mick Mulvaney was seeking to join, they argue in their response, is now moot and ought to be dismissed. And what I think the Democrats are doing is trying to end that endless stream of lawsuits and put all their eggs into the McGahn basket. And that happened after they had the court hearing where the judge in that case seemed to indicate sympathy toward their position. And so if they can get a favorable ruling in the McGahn case, they can wave that around as precedent to compel all of the others to testify. I think that's the strategy.
Mm-hmm. Barbara, there was hope that John Bolton would come forward and tell the truth about what he knew. A lot of skepticism yesterday after reports came out that he may have signed a multi-million-dollar book deal. Will we see John Bolton testify in Congress, or is he just going to play this out and delay it as long as possible?
Yeah, I don't know. I think if there's a favorable ruling in the McGahn case, he may be compelled and we'll see him do it. But I agree with you. I think it's actually disgusting that someone who is a public servant and who obtained information in his employment on behalf of the people is selling that story rather than share it with the public in a time when it's necessary.
Barbara, it's Willie. There are some people who are sharing their stories with the public beginning tomorrow. Bill Taylor, Marie Yovanovitch among them. From your prosecutor's seat, what does that do to this process when the public gets to hear the voices of these people? We've heard their voices through transcripts of their depositions, of their closed testimony. What does it mean to have them seated in a chair on live national television saying some of the things that they said in private?
Well, we'll see how much traction it gets, but I think it could be incredibly compelling. As you know, because you've likely read the transcripts or at least reports about them, what they have to say is really incredibly damaging to President Trump. They talk about the fact that it is crystal clear that this was an exchange and a leverage of military aid in exchange for political favor for President Trump, that Marie Yovanovitch, who was a dedicated career public servant, was removed because she was perceived as an obstacle to a corrupt scheme. When those see the light of day, when they're vivid, when the clips are shown on television and on social media, I think it becomes much harder to ignore than just the printed word. And so if it permeates the national consciousness, it should be incredibly damaging and should be a real wake-up call about impeachment to the American public.
And we know that Jim Jordan was moved to the Intel Committee so he could participate in these hearings. What does that tell you about the way Republicans plan on handling the public phase of this inquiry?
So Jim Jordan is clearly the attack dog. You know, I had a chance to testify before the Judiciary Committee in the summer about the obstruction of justice issue, and I saw Jim Jordan in action. I answered his questions. His job is just full-on attack mode. He seeks to discredit witnesses, to engage in hyperbole. He wants to steal the cameras and the spotlight in hopes of distracting the public from the facts here. by undermining the quest for the truth. But I think it does suggest fear and weakness on the part of the Republicans that, when you don't have the facts on your side, you instead seek to undermine the messenger. And I think that's what Jim Jordan's role is going to be here.
And those open hearings begin tomorrow. You'll see them live on MSNBC. Barbara McQuade, who also wins Best Backdrop of the Morning with the big house over her left shoulder. Very nice. Thanks, Barbara. Still ahead on Morning Joe. Today, the